All right, today I'm excited to talk with Dr. Caitlin Lackey. She's an animal spine specialist and owner of Instride Chiropractic near Dallas, Texas.
Mhm.
Instride gives pet parents more options than the typical traditional treatment of drugs, surgery, and euthanasia when it comes to many health issues that your pet might be experiencing. Instride specializes in offering holistic alternatives of pain relief, wellness promotion, and natural performance enhancement.
Mhm.
Dr. Caitlin founded Instride Chiropractic after experiencing her own miracle story, which was while she was still in school. She suffered a serious head injury that left her with debilitating migraines and with only pain medications and doctors telling her the pain was, quote, all in her head,
Yep,
literally. She,
literally.
she turned to chiropractic care, and Caitlin is now free of those horrible migraines and pain medications. Her mission is to give the same gift of freedom to the health of our four-legged spines. You can find Caitlin, or our four-legged friends, excuse me. You can find Caitlin at instridechiropractic.com. Again, instridechiropractic.com, or follow her on Instagram at instridechiropractic. So, Caitlin, we'll go with Katie as
Sure.
your human patients call you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time today.
So why don't you take a minute to fill in anything I may have missed there? Then we'll do a quick word from our sponsor and get right into your story.
Sure. So I think you pretty well covered it. I just, moving into this field, I thought I wanted to be a vet growing up, but I couldn't do the long hours or the euthanasia. And I grew up riding horses myself, obviously, because I had a head injury riding horses. But I quickly noticed that riding horses, if the rider is dysfunctional, well, then the horse is going to have issues. So I thought, it'd be a good bridge to go to human chiropractic school and take the additional animal certificate as well, because I wanted to really work on horses and riders. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. But then I just got so many calls about small animals. So I really think it's an underserved market. And I'm a pet parent myself. You can probably see my cat running around there in the background. And I have two lovely dogs, a healer mix named Pisey, which is short for pisiform, which is a bone in your wrist. And then Chief, who is a lab. And, being a pet parent myself, going to the vet office and stuff like that. I really see a lot of people, they just get the big three options, which are drugs, surgery, or euthanasia when they have a big problem come up. And I just wanted to address that gap, because if you're a human, you get so many options for treatment, whether it be acupuncture, PT, or chiropractic, or whatever it will be.
Mm-hmm.
But, pets don't always have that option. So I really wanted to bridge that gap and give them the same options that people have.
Great. Yeah. And I think, the topic of the conversation today is how to know when your pet will really benefit from having a chiropractic visit. Like, what are some of those signs that a pet parent might notice? And of course, before we get into that, some folks may or may not even have experience with chiropractic on the human side.
Absolutely.
So in, 60 seconds or less, can you tell us what chiropractic is and maybe the principles of it, and maybe, let's say 90 seconds, and some misconceptions that people might have with just human chiropractic?
Yeah. So if you haven't been to a chiropractor yourself, I strongly recommend that you find someone that works for you. But my little short elevator talk is what a chiropractor does is they locate areas in the spine or outside the spine that aren't moving appropriately. And when they find this area, they free up the motion in that segment and they allow it to move appropriately. Now, that is, it seems really simple what we're doing, but the brain actually thrives on motion. It needs that motion in order to communicate. And the brain, the extension of the brain, is the spinal cord. And coincidentally, that runs right in between our vertebrae of our spinal column. And all vertebrates have that. So if the bones around your spine aren't moving properly, well, then the nerves aren't stimulated correctly. So then the brain has bad information and it's not able to communicate, and it's not also able to heal. So if we get things moving appropriately, we can free up that communication between the brain and the body. And then the brain can do its job of sending the healing signals and allowing the pet to live a pain-free and, relatively happier and healthier life.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does chiropractic, you mentioned you had to get a certificate for doing animal chiropractic. So how does it how is it the same, and how is it different from human chiropractic?
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up. So not all chiropractors are created equal when it comes to working on your animal. There's two ways you can work on an animal. You can either be a veterinarian or you can be a human chiropractor that has taken advanced training. So kind of like I explained before we went on this call, you have to have taken a postdoctorate course. It's usually anywhere from 200 to 300 hours. And then you sit for either the AVCA, American Veterinary Chiropractic Association, or the IVCA, International Veterinary Chiropractic Association. And they both have a board exam. Kind of like people boards, but it's tailored to the animals. There's a practical component where you demonstrate your skills, and then there's also a written component where you answer questions, of course. But once you complete that board exam, if you pass, you are then certified, and then you do continuing hours yearly in order to stay up to date. They do have a list online. The AVCA is animalchiropractic.org or avcadoctors.com, and then the IVCA is ivca.de. They're based out of Germany. But those are people you can find that are certified to work on your animal. And the reason I say that not everyone's created equal when you can't just take your animal to the chiropractor is because they don't know the anatomy. The anatomy is a little bit different when you're working on animal spines. Working on people is completely separate, a whole new animal, if you will, than working on, dogs or horses. The lines of drive are a little bit different. And, of course, there's other considerations like pathology that comes into play that you need to be aware of before you adjust them.
Can you mention the resources again for someone who's a pet parent looking to find a chiropractor?
Yeah, so if you're looking in your area, the best resource is online on animalchiropractic.org or avcadoctors.com or ivca.de. It's a German website for the IVCA.
Got it. Okay, we'll put all those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we have a kitty in the background.
A little crazy. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It adds to the ambiance. So we have a third guest, and the kitty cat's name is
Boots.
Boots.
She's actually one of my better chiropractic patients. She actually had chronic bladder infections like her entire life. And I was so tired of doping her with antibiotics and pain shots and different litter boxes, foil around the house, cat spray. Like I did everything. And I took her to my mentor, Dr. Giggleman, who actually trained me. He's one of the giants in the profession. And she actually had a really stuck sacrum, which is your tailbone, and pelvis, which is your hip bones. And through aligning those and adjusting those 3 appointments later and regular maintenance nowadays, she hasn't had a single problem since. She used to pee all around the house. It was awful. And now she hops in my lap when she wants to be adjusted, which is usually about once a month. So cats can be adjusted too. Actually, it's not my favorite, but some of my better cases are actually cats, some of my miracle patients, and she's included. So
interesting. So if someone were to walk in on, so Boots makes appointments with you by just jumping on your lap.
Yeah.
And what would, if someone were to walk in on that session, what might they see with your adjustment?
Really good question. So I actually try and post videos of me working so people can kind of see what it looks like.
And that's on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram. I have some YouTube videos too. But pretty much what I do is I assess range of motion, and I also do palpation. I assess in individual segments. I check some reflexes and stuff like that. But pretty much it's very similar to a human adjustment, but it's also very different in that the lines of drive are different, the force is different. And I really encourage people to watch a video because it makes a little bit more sense when you see it. But typically what I do for an initial patient is I do a detailed first exam where I check reflexes, I check motion, I check range of motion, I check symmetry. Sometimes I do gait analysis, and then I actually go into the treatment, which is the adjustment.
And so what would someone see? Like, where would your hands be on Boots? I know we're still talking about cats, but I went down this kitty hole, so I want to make sure that we
It really depends on where the restriction is. So I'll see if she'll cooperate. And I haven't adjusted her yet, but this week at least. Come here, sweet.
Hi, Kitty.
Yeah, so she's pretty friendly.
Kitty is all black except for her white paws, and I'm
Except for
guessing
her
that's
white
why she's
paws.
called
Yeah.
Boots.
Yes, you're very intuitive. But pretty much what I do is I assess areas in the spine and I push like this, and then I go side to side and I assess for where there's proper motion and improper motion. And, a thoracic adjustment could look like this, whereas a neck adjustment, let's see if I can back up a little bit, could look like this.
Hmm.
It really depends on where their problem areas are and where the areas are actually stuck. So that's where, it comes into play watching the videos. But she's an older cat. I know she doesn't look like it because she's little, but she actually has some neck degeneration. So another thing I do for her is neck traction. And people think this actually hurts the animal, but pretty much what I do is I just take their neck like this and pretty much pull it straight out and make their neck longer. And that actually helps to decompress the disc in her neck and alleviate the space there, because pets can have radiculopathy too. And radiculopathy is just a fancy word for the numbness and tingling that goes down into your arms or legs because your nerves aren't happy. So we see that in people, and we also see it in pets. Cause excessive grooming. It can cause, them not being able to put weight on it. It can be any number of things. Animals are all a little bit different.
Got it. Okay, so let's get into dogs.
Sure.
And the topic of this is how to know when your dog needs to go to the chiropractor. And if you just said that to a random dog owner on the street, they would, the first question would be, there's such thing as taking your dog to a chiropractor.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So why don't we maybe even start with some, where does it make sense to start with? I'm going to do this. I think most people listening are already open-minded enough who are listening this far that, okay, there's value in having my dog having a chiropractic adjustment. Yeah. So let's get right into the meat of it, which is, what are some potential signs that a pet parent might notice that would be giveaways that, hey, your dog could benefit from a chiropractic adjustment? What are the typical things you see?
So that's a really good question. Before I dive into that, I like to say that pets are not like people. They, used to be in the wild until I domesticated them. So signs of weakness in an animal, they try to repress that because they don't want, it's eat or be eaten in the animal world. So with that being said, a lot of their symptoms, they actually will hide them and they won't tell you about it until it's usually end stage or like emergency. And cats are really bad about that for like kidney disease and stuff like that. But I find a lot of pet parents, they're very intuitive with their animal. They'll notice the more subtle things, but it's usually hard to tell. So that's why I make videos, because people don't know how to check their animal at home. So I do have a YouTube video that's very popular. It's 4 ways to check if your pet needs to be adjusted. And the most common thing I see is flinching to touch. So if you run your fingers up and down their spine with about as much pressure as you are, petting them at home, they shouldn't flinch or be reactive to touch. A lot of your older pets in certain areas, usually in the mid-back where it turns into the lower back, will actually arch their back away from you. It's a very common area to be painful, especially with jumping on and off the bed, especially in cats, like what she just did. So the hyperpaniculus response is where they flinch excessively.
So I'm gonna walk through this again. So what you said was kind of taking 2 fingers, like what I heard. So 2 fingers, like when you're in the airplane and the flight attendant says, these are the exits, like that, right?
Kind of like that, and you just run it with a little bit of space up their spine. I usually use my thumb, and
you go, and that's important. So you said up their spine, meaning from bottom
to top.
Okay, and where, starting on their bottom, roughly, like the tail, or?
I start kind of right where the tail starts.
Okay.
You're gonna feel 2 knobby things where their hips are. So start at their tailbone and where their hips come together, and you're gonna run up along the spine. You should be able to feel the little spinous processes. They're kind of like this, and you run along either side of them, along the paraspinals. But if you run your hand up their back with mild to moderate pressure, no more than about 5 pounds, they should be able to tolerate that equally from side to side at each segment. And I find a lot of pets, when you run if I run, like, especially at events, I check people's dogs. You run your hand up their back and they arch their back away from you. They sink in the hocks.
Arch their back away from you. Well, that means they kind of bend upwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they'll sit down
Or
without being asked to
okay.
get away from pressure. Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll try and get away from the pressure, or they will flinch excessively. It's called the hyperpaniculus response.
Flinch meaning what?
So their skin will crawl. I call it creepy crawlies for layman's terms. But it is called a hyperpaniculus response, where basically, you know, on horses, when a fly lands on them and they flinch their skin to get the fly off, that's what it is. Dogs have that too.
So let me stop there, because I remember, you know, I used to rub Sonny's back, my golden retriever, and you know, it seemed like he liked it, but his skin would kind of it wouldn't flinch like a horse's, but it would kind of what's the word? Kind of, you know, rotate sort of, or you know, he'd kind of like it was like gosh, why can't I think of?
Get some extra skin.
Yeah, he definitely had some extra skin.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it seemed like it felt good to him. So it wasn't but I'm just trying to help people distinguish between what's a flinch and what is that sort of response where it was like his entire hide kind of moved a little bit.
Okay. So, you know, most pet parents know when their pet likes or dislikes something.
Mm-hmm.
I would think most people would agree if you press down on your pet's back and they arch their back or sit down or go to bite you. Actually, I've had that before. That's usually a negative response.
Okay.
You know, some pets like to be pet a certain way in certain areas. So, of course, you know, every pet's a little bit different. But, you know, it makes more sense if you watch it, of course. But usually if they try and get away from pressure, it's a sign of pain.
Okay.
Just like if I were to poke on something, say you slammed your hand in a door, right? If I went to poke your finger that you just slammed in a door, you'd probably hit me, right? Because it hurts when you apply pressure. And the same thing applies to the spine, whether it be in people or in pets.
So that was one test, is the two fingers going up the spine, kind of starting at the tail.
Yep.
And going up looking for signs of pain or the
flinching or arching away. Yep.
Arching away.
Mm-hmm.
What was the second one?
So the next thing I do is I check reflexes. I use the paw knuckling response. So you take a pet's hand and you know how they are like this on the ground, right? And for those of you that can't see, they're usually palm down on the floor when they're walking around. Now what I will do is I'll actually flip the paw upside down to where the top of their toes are touching the ground, and they should automatically flip it back to where it's supposed to be. That means that the brain knows where the feet are and it's able to regulate that and correct it. I find a lot of your wiener dogs, for example, who have disc compression or IBDD, actually don't know where their feet are. So because of this, they won't be able to correct that, and they'll just leave their paw like this. And I find a lot of your pets will actually drag their feet, and they'll get blisters on top of the toes from dragging their feet around. So that's something I see a lot.
So again, the test to walk through it, of course, you have the videos. But for someone trying to picture this, it would be like if you grabbed your wrist and went limp, you would do that with their paw basically, and then lower it to the ground, and when it touches, they should make it flat again.
Yeah. So pretty much like they're standing, I just take their foot and I flip it upside down and I place it back on the ground. And I challenge the brain and say, okay, brain, this foot is upside down. What are you going to do about it? And then the brain should sense that, and it should flip the paw pad back to touching the floor.
Okay. So you'll actually invert it basically.
Yep.
And that's just front paws only?
You can do all four. All four.
Trying to picture how that would work with rear paws.
Yeah.
But I guess
again, it makes more sense in a video.
Okay. So we have some dogs joined us here.
Yeah,
who do we have?
Yeah, open the door. They're too smart. So anyway, so that is the paw knuckling response. I do that. I check for pain on palpation, which is the fingers up the spine, and then I flip the paws over. That's called the knuckling response. And then the next thing I would do, I would assess for symmetry and gait. So I'll watch them walk. I find a lot of times pets will have one hip higher than the other. Their head will be turned one way, or they can have, those postural abnormalities, just like humans. We're always looking down at cell phones, so our head's a little too far forward or our hips are off. So I will find that to be a very common thing that pets also have as well. So those are three of the most common things. There's some other things as well, but the biggest thing that pet parents actually call me for is behavior change. A lot of your older pets with arthritis will
So
actually not be.
just
Yeah,
to sorry to interrupt. So
that's okay.
we mentioned three. We had the spine pressure. We had the
Knuckling.
paw upside down, paw knuckling. Third was just seeing how they walk and looking for an imbalance, and the fourth was
The fourth was a behavior change that
behavior.
you
Okay.
noticed. So behavior change could look like anything from they can't jump up on the bed like they used to be able to, or I find a lot of dogs with neck issues, they can't put their harness on or their collar on, or they have difficulty going through the dog door. Sometimes it's they can't get around on the tile or the wood floors because they have really bad traction or they can't feel their feet. So it's like they're walking around in ice skates. They have no sense of sensation in their feet. It's like their feet are asleep all the time. And then just other things like won't play with their toys. They don't like being pet anymore. Maybe they're aggressive. I find a lot of your older dogs and the owner purchased a puppy. The old dog will actually start being aggressive towards the puppy because they don't want to play. They hurt. So behavior change is the number one thing that people call me about because their pets start to act out when they have pain.
Now, let me ask this, if, I think your everyday pet owner, when they notice something different in their dog from a behavioral point of view, any of those things you mentioned, like, they don't jump up on the bed anymore, or they're, whimpering, or they're just not their usual self, pep in the step. It seems to me like the last thing that they would think of doing would be calling a chiropractor.
Yeah.
So what is, and the first things that come to mind are, of course, calling the vet or calling some other pet parent that they trust, or, hey, I'm just going to get my dog some joint supplements and see how that works for a few weeks. Or maybe my dog has arthritis, so I'll take him to the vet and maybe they're going to get some anti-inflammatory shot or something. So, at what point do pet parents usually come to you after having tried other sorts of approaches?
Yeah, so this is a one sticky point. I'm really happy you brought this up. I'm going to answer your question by asking you another question. Okay. And I know people hate when I do this, but do you brush your teeth every day?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you do that?
Because it's a habit.
Because it's a habit and it's a healthy habit,
I
right?
like the feeling of my teeth being clean.
Yeah. And you also really like when they don't fall out, right? Because they're not rotting away from cavities, right?
Right.
So you take care of things you use every day. Agreed? Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. So I'm going to challenge pet parents to think of this more as a maintenance instead of I have to wait until there's a problem. I find a lot of pet parents, unfortunately, wait, I've tried this, I've tried that, it's not working, when you're not actually addressing the true cause, which is the bones aren't moving correctly. You can add anti-inflammatories all day. You can, do I don't even know what else people do nowadays because I just think so differently than other people. But you can add whatever you want into their system, but it's not actually correcting the problem of that segment being stuck. It's not actually getting the movement back into the spine, and it's not getting the stimulation back to the brain. So, I find that it's actually really, really important to do maintenance for the spine because we get up, we walk around every day. Pets play really hard. They jump off of stairs, they run into stuff, they crash into stuff. Like when I see pets out in public, it's really hard for me to contain myself, just having the mindset that I do, because I think all spines deserve to be adjusted on a maintenance schedule. I think it's really important to take care of that because it can prevent things from happening in the future. If your tires weren't aligned and you never aligned them, and then you waited until they blew up to go take and get them aligned, the tire guy would be like, what the heck? You could have done this 20,000, 30,000 miles ago, right? But you waited, so now it's an emergency, right? So I hate when people wait until it's an emergency. I get really good results with emergencies for pain relief, for owners looking for pain relief, But I would find that it's actually better if pet parents think more along the lines of maintenance. If they could just say, this is something I'm going to add to the routine to make them more healthy, instead of, okay, well, this is just something I'm doing because they hurt.
Right.
Like we said before, pets can't tell you when they hurt. So it's important to have it on a schedule.
And so what about a pet parent listening to you and saying, amen, Dr. Katie, I'm all about having
I hope
my,
so.
what's that?
I hope so. I
Wait,
find a lot of your humans that go to see the chiropractor are more willing to take their pets to the chiropractor. So
right. I'm one of those, even though I'm not as regular as my chiropractor would like me to be, but
yeah.
let's say, I'm all about this.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a typical regimen, or typical schedule to come in and have my dog get adjusted?
Yeah, so I'm really happy you asked that question. A lot of your older pets need it more regularly if they have a pre-existing issue such as arthritis or, the discs are too close together or they have a pre-existing injury. But I find a lot of your younger animals do great 4 to 6 times a year. Some of my older pets that I put on maintenance are usually about once a month or twice a month, but that's when they're on maintenance. If I am addressing a specific complaint, like for example, I had a weenie dog that the owners contacted me, and this weenie dog has acute paralysis. They had a disc actually pressing on the nerve, and she couldn't pee or poop on her own. She couldn't walk at all, had no control of her legs, and she couldn't even wag her tail. So her owners couldn't afford the $8,000 spinal surgery. Go figure, that's a lot of money. And she had had back pain in the past, but of course, now she re-injured it. And they couldn't afford the $8,000 spinal surgery, so they contacted me, and we started doing treatments at 3 times a week. I told them I want to do 3 to 5 times a week to start out. I know that seems aggressive, but you got to think, just like a medication, you're taking it in regular intervals, and then the body does the healing in between.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw her 3 or 4 times a week. I did that for 2 weeks. And this dog was completely paralyzed, couldn't control her own bowels. And after 7 appointments, she was walking and able to control her bowels. So her owners were over the moon. And I actually saw her a couple weeks ago, and she's now on a maintenance schedule. We see her every other month now, and she's 13. So her owners were going to euthanize her, and they chose not to. So I'm really excited about that.
Wow. Very, very cool story.
Yeah.
And so for folks on a budget who are trying to assess, well, do I have it? How expensive is this going to be? What's the range of a typical session like, whether it's yours or versus someone like living in New York City, for example? Do you have a sense of that?
So I can't speak for everybody else as far as, what their price schedule is going to be. Of course, I want you to choose quality. So definitely go with someone certified by the ABCA or IBCA. My current fee schedule for small animal, whether it be a dog or a cat, is about $50 an adjustment. But I know certain people, like I travel to a pet, so I also have to charge a travel fee. So that may change their rates. I've seen anywhere from about 30 to 70 for a small animal. And I also see horses. So it's usually 100 to 160 for a horse. I charge about $130 for an adjustment for a horse. And then I do a very detailed first exam and consultation calls with veterinarians. So we can be working as a team on an animal. And that first examination, first consultation is $30 for that. So I can't speak for other people and their rates, but usually ballpark, you're going to pay about 50 or 60 for a treatment. And, some people do packages too. So that is what most people can expect, but I want to reiterate that health is an investment, not an expense. So if you're doing, say, a monthly adjustment for your weenie dog who used to be on gabapentin twice a day, I don't know how much you pay for gabapentin, but that can add up. So if you can, get rid of all the pain pills, then and instead do the adjustment, it might be more cost effective that way. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on building a spreadsheet actually that's going to have that whole cost breakdown, but I find that through doing the adjustment, you actually pay less in the pain management. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it's, it seems like the kind of thing where, if you notice something a little bit off in your dog, it might even be more cost effective to come to, a chiropractor first versus going to a vet or doing something else, just to kind of see if there's something that is, mechanically off there that can be helped. And then you give that a couple of days. Like you said, chiropractic is all about letting the body heal itself and then kind of reassessing and seeing how things work before maybe taking bigger steps.
So yes and no. I do believe that people need to choose conservative treatment first. There's actually a human study that they did recently people who chose their chiropractor as their primary care doctor actually saw anywhere from 60 to 80% less in prescription medication and emergency room visits. So definitely I agree that seeing a chiropractor first can help with a lot of your chronic issues or a lot of your little stuff, if you will. But actually for pets, it's usually a good idea, since they hide their pain, to start with a vet visit. I recommend all my patients, I actually require a referral from a veterinarian prior to seeing a pet. And the reason I do that is I want the vet to rule out any of the big scary things, like if your pet may have cancer or a broken bone or, maybe a infection I don't know about. I want them to rule that out first, because a pet can't tell me, hey, it hurts here, hey, it feels like this, and they can't fill out a new patient paperwork, and their owners don't always know. So I do recommend that, yes, they work together with their veterinarian. Their veterinarian's more holistic, awesome, and they want to do the conservative treatments. But I do agree that for chronic issues, I feel like seeing a chiropractor is definitely in the better interest of a patient than your more invasive procedures.
Okay. So scratch what Tim, the podcast host, said about,
but politely, yes
but
and
politely.
no.
But I think you explained why, right? So making sure that there isn't some larger issue that your dog has first, and I think that's a very unique and commendable practice that you have, that you do require a referral from a vet, or a sign off from a vet.
It's actually the law in a lot of states. We're trying to legally change that. But since I'm a human chiropractor, I actually do require that referral. And in many states, that's the case.
Okay.
So if you are choosing a human chiropractor, it is important to note that in many states, they do require that initial referral to be signed off by a vet.
Okay. Well, Katie, I think we covered a pretty good amount of content here, and I think maybe we'll retitle this episode "4 I don't like to use the word test, but 4 ways to tell if your dog needs to visit the chiropractor," because I think those are pretty actionable ways that we walk through there. Anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So first, I really appreciate you having me. I'm going to shamelessly plug myself, but just because
Please do.
I know it is a mission of mine to actually educate pet parents, because I personally do not like when pet parents feel like they don't have options for treatment, whether it be financially they can't afford a treatment, or otherwise, or they just feel frustrated with their current relationship they have with their veterinarian. And I really want to build connections with veterinarians too, because they don't know this is a thing yet. This is fairly new to the pet world. So I'm trying to grow my network and educate, because I feel like pets deserve to have this option available to them. So I do recommend that people follow me on social media. It's at Instride Chiropractic for nearly everything, whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or my personal website. But I am actually, moving towards educating other animal chiropractors as well. And I'm starting my own podcast. So if you are interested in moving into this field, you want, to know a little bit more about what it takes to work in this field, I'm going to be starting a podcast myself. And it's at Making Strides for Animal Chiro on Instagram and Facebook. And I look forward to mentoring other people so I can replicate myself, if you will, and, spread what I have to offer nationwide. Because just one person, I can make a difference, but it has to be a little bit further away than directly hands-on with the pet. But I feel like through mentoring other people, I really feel like this is going to, be like a wildfire. It's going to catch on and people are going to start doing it. And I want taking your pet to the chiropractor to be just as regular as brushing your teeth every day. So that is my mission.
Excellent. That's a headline right there. If we did the little snippet at the beginning, that would be it.
I really, really think that there is a place for chiropractic in every person or every pet that has vertebrae. I can't do invertebrates yet. But I really feel like it helps their body function better. And I really want to do everything I can integratively, working together with veterinarians and pet owners to give their pet the best ability to live their life at 110% if they can, enjoying better mobility and, and just enjoying their lives. So that's what I'm about. And I'm very appreciative if your pet parents join me in that passion and that mission as I move forward.
Excellent. Well, I commend you for that, and also in taking the leap to spread your message out there. So we'll be sure to get all these links in the show notes. So Dr. Caitlin Lackey with Instride Chiropractic. You can find her at instridechiropractic.com, or you can follow her on Instagram at Instride Chiropractic. And you also mentioned for chiropractors, it was who are interested
for chiropractors interested, or for anyone in the healing space interested, I am starting my own podcast to mentor and coach other people that are going to be adjusting animals. It's at Making Strides for Animal Chiro.
Okay, excellent. And we got on a roll in the beginning, so I didn't do my usual sponsorship message.
That's
and
okay.
I'll do it at the end. I'll do it at the end here. So this episode is brought to you by Sonny's Goldens, which is my brand. It's a line of supplements specially designed for the unique needs of golden retrievers. And Forever Golden is our flagship product, loaded with 10 human-grade ingredients. These are like Olympic athlete-grade ingredients, not the usual bulk powders that you find in most pet supplements. And we also kept out all the itchy stuff like grains, brewer's yeast, etc., that you find in most products, because Goldens, like my Sonny, who I grew up with, tend to be a little bit more sensitive than others, and sometimes you need the volume turned up on many of these areas. So podcast listeners can go to Sonny's Goldens, that's SUNNYS, Goldens.com, and use the code podcast for $10 off your first order of Forever Golden. All right, Dr. Katie, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and all the best to you in your efforts, and look forward to keeping in touch as we both proceed with our missions here and helping dogs live healthier and happier lives.
I can't wait to see you take Sonny to the chiropractor. Definitely want to tag me on that Instagram post.
There we go.
There you go. Awesome.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.